Hey everybody, it's John King with Summit Funding, and I appreciate you joining me tonight for my monthly update on what the heck is going on with the California Dream for All program and what can we expect. So thank you everybody for joining me. And this is being streamed on multiple channels. So I've got people who are watching this via webinar, got people watching this on YouTube, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, everywhere. So if you have questions, no matter where you're watching, just post your question in the comments section of whatever feed you're watching, and I'll be able to see your questions and pull them up on screen so that I can really make this as interactive as I possibly can. So let's go ahead and dive straight into the meat of what we're going to talk about today. So first of all, for those of you who know what the Dream for All program is and you want to get the update of what the heck is going on and when is this money coming back, let's start with that. When is the Dream for All money coming back? You ready for the answer? We don't know. Here's what we do know. We know that the money has been allocated. There's $200 million allocated for California Dream for All for the fiscal year of 2023-2024. That year started July 1st of 2023. And it goes through June 30th of 2024. So when that money is released, you would think it needs to be within that calendar year. But I learned that isn't the case. I learned that technically the money can be used even years into the future. And I don't think they're going to wait anywhere near that long. What they're waiting for is they're waiting for the state legislature to provide the language of what is called the trailer bill. So I got a lesson in legislature and how the California legislature works in watching and following this entire process. And basically what happens is in January of 2023, the governor proposes a budget. And he says, this is how much money I want to go towards all of these different things. That budget year starts July 1st. So they wrangle over it, and by June 15th, June 30th, they pass the budget. And on July 1st, they start spending money based on that budget. But they're allowed to write updated language. They're allowed to change the wording of how they want the money spent up until September 14th. So on September 14th, that is the deadline for the trailer bill. That's the word for bills that are trailer or following behind the actual budget. So that trailer bill had to be completed and sent by September 14th. Now, I am trying really hard to get a copy of the trailer bill. Technically, those things should be available through the Freedom of Information Act. I'm trying to get a copy of it just to see, hey, what's the wording? It's public information. What is the wording that the state legislature has provided to Cal HFA? Cal HFA is the department that manages the money, because that wording is what Cal HFA is waiting for. Once Cal HFA has gotten that wording, then they're going to spend some time figuring out, hey, how do we implement these rules? And what other things do we need to change? So you're going to hear me tonight talk about some things that I think they're going to change. The truth is I know nothing as a fact. There is no factual information that's out there. But I want you to be prepared for what I see coming. And I want you to stay updated so that you can get the access to the money when it becomes available and help you to make your dream come true. So here's what we're expecting. I expect the trailer bill to be delivered to Cal HFA already. And Cal HFA is going to then figure out, hey, this is going to take us 3 months to implement, or 6 months to implement, or whatever time frame it's going to take them to implement. Once they've got it implemented, once they know how long it's going to take them to implement, they're going to give us a timeline. So there was an announcement made in June that said, hey, this fall, we're going to give you an update on the dates that California Dream for All is going to be available. Well, they didn't say the money was going to be available this fall. And many people misunderstand and they think, oh, great, the money's available this fall. Wonderful. I don't see it happening this fall. I think they're going to, by the way, fall started, 5 days ago? Like, it's barely fall. 3 days ago, I don't know, whatever it was. Last week, fall started. So we have 3 months left of fall. Fall doesn't end until December, end of December 21st. So we have a lot of time for Cal HFA to actually give us a timeline. And that's not when the money is going to be released. So they're going to tell us a date. I have no idea what that date is going to be. My guess, it's going to be sometime in 2024. My guess is that it's going to be sometime in the spring of 2024. Might even coincidentally coincide with when the money was released last year, which was end of March, early April. So that's critical to understand. We're going to get information about the timeline, but they're not going to release the money the moment they tell us the timeline. They've got to implement what these changes are going to be. And so let's talk a little bit. By the way, I've got a lot more people watching right now. So no matter where you're watching this, no matter what stream, YouTube, Facebook, webinar, if you have questions, please post them into chat or comments wherever you're at. Those will be fed directly to me, and I'll be able to update you and talk about your questions. If you're watching recorded, then post a comment anyway, and I'll be able to see it, and I'll come back later and address it. So let's talk about what changes I think are coming. I'm going to make this disclaimer about 42 times, which is I have no insider information. I don't know anything to be fact, but I've done a lot of research. All of this information is public record, or my guessing, but it's what the state legislature has been saying or what they've been asking for. So a couple of things. First of all, the state legislature in the original bill said, I'm going to paraphrase here, but they basically put wording in there that says we want to give priority to people who are first-generation home buyers. Now, what does that mean? I don't know. It means your parents don't own a home is what it literally means. The question is, what does that mean? Like, did your parents never own a home? Did your parents, as long as they don't own a home right now, what are the rules and how do we track it? I think it's going to be just on your honor. Like, you're going to sign a form that says under penalty of perjury, I agree that this is correct. And one of the things that you're agreeing to is the fact that, hey, this money is fine, that I'm a first generation homeowner. Okay. This is not a rule in place, but it did refer to that in some of the language. And so I think it's something that they may enact. And then it becomes, how do we track it? How do you prove that somebody is a first generation home buyer? That's going to be a tough one. But like I said a moment ago, I think it's going to be just based on your word and your honor. So that is a possibility of something that they're going to put into place. Another thing that I noticed was the state legislature, the senators and everybody represents a certain district, a certain area within the state. And back in April, when the money ran out, they had some hearings with the budget committee. And one of the things that they talked about a lot is, where was the money spent? What counties, what legislative districts got the money relative to what percentage of the money they got compared to the percentage of the population? One of the things that I heard is that Sacramento County received the largest amount of money. And I don't know if it's largest amount by dollars or largest amount by percentage of population. Either way, there's a lot of arguing that goes on between people in the state capitol. And they want to create as much benefit as they can for the constituents they serve. So they're asking lots of questions about who got the money and what percentage of the money did they get compared to the percentage of the population. And it makes me wonder, are they going to put some provisions in that trailer bill that says, hey, you've got to allocate the money proportionately to the population within that region? Now, is that the number of loans or is that the amount of the loans? Because you buy one property in San Francisco and it's a $800,000, $1 million property. So your 20% of $1 million is $200,000. That's one person that gets $200,000. In the Central Valley, you might have the average home price be $333,000, which means 20% is 66 grand. That means that you could have 3 families that got a home, or one family in the Bay Area. And I'm not telling you that we shouldn't have families in the Bay Area or the money shouldn't. I'm not telling you anything about where the money should go. I'm telling you, this is what CalHFA has to figure out. If they put that into the wording, and if they said they want a proportionate amount of the allocation to go to counties based upon their population, then they have to say, well, then does that mean we give San Francisco County a percentage of the total amount or a percentage of the total number of loans that we do? And then how do you track that? How do they set up a system that allocates the money appropriately? That would be a nightmare. So the problem with any kind of legislation is that there's a disconnect sometimes between the people who write the rules and the people who enforce the rules. And so that disconnect means the people who enforce the rules have to figure out, well, how do I accomplish what they were asking me to accomplish? Because the law says I have to do that. That's what CalHF is working on right now. I'll tell you, there's a lot of things that could change. They could change anything about the rules. What they can't change is the fact that, hey, this is a shared appreciation loan. And I'll talk to you in a couple of minutes about how that works. What they can't change the guidelines of what Fannie Mae offers. And so could they say, hey, we're going to allow this for FHA loans as well? They sure could. I don't see that happening. I honestly don't. So I think that they're going to keep it with Fannie Mae loans. I think they're going to keep it, meaning that you have to have at least a 680 credit score, or if you're lower income, a 660 credit score. I think that's going to stay the same. I think that the debt to income ratio requirements are going to stay the same. Again, I don't know, but I think they're going to stay the same. But I think that they're going to have to change something regarding how you got access to the money. And so a lot of people are asking me, John, how do I get in line to get the money? Okay, for the 14th time, I have no insider information that is unique to me. And I'm not telling you something that I know what the rules are going to be. I don't know. But I have a lot of thoughts. I think the state didn't recognize how quickly this money was going to be allocated. And they made a pretty fatal mistake. Fatal in that basically they said, hey, first come, first serve, which is pretty common. Like the normal down payment assistance programs, and I'll cover some of those in a couple of minutes. Those normal down payment assistance programs, the money's always available. And so they said, well, whatever, like that money is going to be there and we'll just do it first come, first serve. They had a similar program a year ago called the Equity Builder. And the Equity Builder program gave a 10% down payment instead of 20%. But you had to be under the area median income, but you had the money forgiven. I think it was after 3 or 5 years, the money was forgiven and you never had to pay it back. So it was a great program, a whole different set of rules, but that money was less money and it lasted for 9 months, 8 months. So the state thought, oh my gosh, this money's going to last. There's more money here. Yes, we're giving more money per person. Yes, more people are eligible. But that program lasted 8 or 9 months. This program will last at least 3 to 6 months. They didn't expect it to last 8 business days. So here's what happened. Here's the reality of what happened. You have 3 categories of people. You have the people who were pre-approved and they were out shopping for a home and they never found a home in those 8 days. And they were devastated. They thought, man, this was my opportunity to own a home. And just because I didn't get lucky, I didn't get the money because I didn't have good timing on there. Now, a second group of people were already in contract before this money was released. And I'm going to guess a third of the money, total my guess, but I think it's reasonable for me to guess that a third of the money went to people who were already in contract to buy a home. They were buying a home using a different type of loan, and halfway through their 30-day escrow, they find out about this program. Like, oh my gosh, let's cancel our current loan and start over with this one. And so people who didn't need the money because they were approved under a different program, they were approved using no down payment assistance, but they said, my money or other people's money? I'm going to pick other people's money. I don't blame them, but those people got the money. And so now you have people who just by luck happen to be standing at the right place at the right time. It's like when they make the mistake and put gas prices at a super low price. You ever seen the news where, oh my God, they were selling gas for $1 a gallon because the new guy was working by himself and he pressed the wrong button and he changed the price of gas to $1 a gallon. If you happened to be driving past that gas station at that moment and you turned in when nobody else was in line, woohoo, baby, you got gas for $1 a gallon. By the way, I paid $6 a gallon today. Craziness. Anyway, you got gas for $1 a gallon, but you were lucky to be in the right place at the right time. And you really didn't need the gas. Like you filled up because, well, who's not going to fill up for $1 a gallon? But maybe that was necessary for somebody else because that was the only way they were going to get gas to be able to go to work to pay for the food that they need to put on the table for their kids. Like I know I'm being a bit outrageous here, but you get my point. So that second group of people, they got the money, but they didn't even expect it, and they got the money because they happened to be in line. Then you got a third group of people, which is, hey, they were looking for the money. They got the money accepted. They got their reservation made. But some of them had problems with the home. Some of them, they looked at the home and they said, you know what? This inspection is a problem. I I don't want to buy this house, or this appraisal came in low. This house isn't worth what I'm paying for it. And then they reach out to their lender and they'd say, hey, lender, I don't want to buy this house. I'm going to cancel it. And I already found this other house down the street and I got my offer accepted. And so can you please transfer my money over to that house? And the state of California's rules say you're not allowed. You can't move the money from one home to another. You can't move the money from one transaction to another. That was the original set of rules, which means you were stuck with a moral dilemma, a financial dilemma, and a moral dilemma, which is, do I buy a house that I'm not happy with, or that I think there's a problem with? But you got to compare that to the fact of, or do I take advantage of, lose the opportunity to take advantage of this money? And so people bought homes this spring that they wouldn't have otherwise bought because they were in such a rush to get the money in a short period of time. And if they canceled, they lost access to the money. That created a set of disincentives that I believe the state would be, how do I want to say this politely? The state would be asleep at the wheel. The CalHFA would be asleep at the wheel. And they're not. I'm not saying that they are. I think they're super smart. I know some of the people that are in charge and do their training and really, really smart people, and they really, really care, and they want to take good care of you. And so here's the fact. They have to set up some kind of a system to reserve money. Now, I'm not telling you they're going to. I'm saying my opinion. They have to, because that's the only way. Now, how do they do that? Because there's only $200 million of the money, which is going to be about 1,500 families statewide. So I think they have two options. It's first come, first serve, but you have reservation. Once you get the reservation, you can keep the money and use the money anytime, I don't know, 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, I don't know what time frame, but you can cancel one property and buy another one, and that's not a big deal. I think that's what they need to do. Or maybe they need to do a lottery type system. Maybe they take everybody who was interested in the money and they said, hey, I know that you're interested in getting this money, and so I'm going to put you into a lottery. And we've got 10,000 people, and only 1,500 of you are going to get it, but you're going to know tonight. You're going to watch it 8 p.m. while Channel 3 pulls out the tickets, and you get to see if your golden ticket was pulled. Okay. I don't know if that's what they're going to do either, but I can't imagine that they won't. I can't imagine that they're going to put everybody in the same position that they were in. And so if they're going to do that, the state needs to figure out, how do we track that? How do we build that out? Those are the things that the state's thinking about right now. So when you ask me, John, how do I get in line for the money? There's no way to get in line for the money right now. Now, what I will tell you is you need to prepare. You must prepare, because I had so many clients who didn't prepare. I had so many clients who were talking to me in February. They said, hey, I heard something about the state issuing some money sometime this spring. And, can I get some? And of course, I didn't know then when you could get it, but I did know that, well, gosh, I know you probably likely have to have a credit score similar to what CalHFA's other programs require, which is a 680 credit score. And they weren't ready. They didn't have their credit in line. So if you're in a position where you don't know where your credit score is and you haven't had it checked, you got to start now by letting me do a soft credit check. Because if you let me do a soft credit check, then I will be able to tell you exactly what your credit score is right now. So I'm going to quickly show on the screen. So I'll pull this off in a minute, but I'll leave this up for a quick second here, which is, if you want to know what your credit looks like right now, you need to let me do a soft credit check. And so you're going to scan the QR code on the left, and that is going to be the QR code to download my mobile app. And when you download that mobile app, you'll start the application process. You'll fill in all of your personal information. You'll give me a blood sample. Okay, no blood samples. But you'll fill in all of your information, and I will pull a soft credit report. So what that'll allow me to do is it will allow me, I'll make this a little bit bigger on me and smaller on that one. All right, you still hopefully can scan the QR code. Anyway, you can go on there. You can fill in all the information, and I really want you to upload your income documents. Now you're going to say, John, why do you want to see my income documents? Because sometimes what you think you make and what I think you make, they're two totally different things. And so we need to see your paperwork, because that's another reason why people weren't prepared. So the first one is maybe their credit wasn't where it needs to be. But the second one is how they're paid. Maybe they're in a position where you're getting, bonuses, and we don't know if your bonuses are going to continue. Maybe you're self-employed. Being self-employed, it's challenging to qualify for a mortgage. It's actually harder for you to get a mortgage than your staff, because your staff's pretty simple. They're just doing a job for a certain dollar amount. And if your business folds, they'll just move to a different company and do a similar job for a similar amount of income. But for you, for the owner of the business, you're taking all the risk. You have all the reward. You have all of the opportunity to earn all of the income, but you are one wrong decision away from losing it. And that's the risk that you take for being the business owner. But the mortgage world's worried about that. And so we look at the last 2 years of tax returns. And guess what? Your last 2 years of tax returns includes some COVID hangover for some people. Like you've got, your tax returns might be 2021 and 2022. Depending upon the nature of your business, 2021 might not have been a good year. So you're saying, yeah, John, but that's not really reflective of what I really make. Well, most of the time we have to use 2 years of tax returns when you're self-employed. So check with me now. That's what you need to do to get prepared, is scan the QR code on the left to get the process started. Even though you're not ready to apply, we cannot officially do the loan for you. We can do a pre-approval for a conventional loan so that you know that you're ready, and we'll show you some other options that you may qualify for in the meantime so that you can say, hey, maybe I don't want to wait to buy. And I'll explain to you in a couple minutes why you may not want to wait to buy. The QR code on the right, by the way, is a link to my YouTube channel, my California Dream for All YouTube channel, where I've got a playlist of all of the rules from the original program. Now, I don't know what the new rules are going to be. I don't know what the guidelines are going to be, but I know what the guidelines were on the first program. And so if you're looking for feedback on, well, what were the rules? These are 1 to 2 minute snippets of videos that talk about what the rules are that might help you be able to say, hey, I'm not sure if I do qualify. Maybe I need to have John do the soft credit and take a look at my income and see where I stand. And so if you think that's the position that you're in, then scan the QR code on the right and check out those videos and take a look. Subscribe to my channel while you're on there, but check out those videos and get real detailed information about what your options are, or not what your options are, but what the requirements were originally. And then if you want to know what your options are, scan the QR code to the left. All right. So the question I have been asked so many times is, John, should I wait for the money? By the way, for those of you who don't know what the California Dream for All program is, in a minute, I'm going to cover how the program works and what it is. But I have so many people asking me, John, should I wait for the money? That's a really tough question. So what I'll tell you is, in this market right now, affordability of the monthly payment is the biggest challenge. It's the biggest thing that I'm dealing with when I'm talking to people and I'm saying, hey, congratulations, you're qualified. And at the purchase price that you want, here's your monthly payment. And often it's a lot more than what they're willing to spend. Now, willing to versus able to. I understand that people don't want to be house poor. I don't want you to be house poor. But what I do want you to understand is sometimes we have to sacrifice. Because right now we are at the high end of the interest rate cycle. Now, you didn't hear me say I guarantee interest rates won't go higher. What I'm telling you is we're at the high end of the interest rate cycle. And as we think about that cycle, it's just that. It's a cycle. The Fed has said they might raise rates one more time. So it is clear. The Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, the head of the Federal Reserve, has said we might raise rates one more time. That's all they're projecting. So that says we are at the top of the cycle. Well, because it's a cycle, at some point it comes back down. We don't know when. We don't know by how much. But what we do know is you'll have the opportunity to refinance and lower your payment, which you never have the chance to do when you're a renter. When you're a renter, you cannot call the landlord and say, hey, interest rates have dropped. I'm sure you refinanced your mortgage to get a lower interest rate, and therefore I want you to lower my payment. That'd be pretty awesome if you could do that. But it's not going to happen. But you can do that if you own the home. So you're buying a house at the height of payments, at the height of interest rates, which means you have room for rates to go down. Think of the people that bought a home in 2021 when rates were at 2.5, and you say, my God, John, I wish I was that guy. Maybe you wish you were that guy. But I'll tell you what you have to realize. You have to realize that that person bought at the lowest possible interest rate, which is great. And they have it fixed for 30 years. But there's no likelihood of lowering it anymore. They're kind of handcuffed and stuck in that house. If they don't like that house, tough. Because if you sell that house and buy something else, you're going to have a huge monthly payments. And so you shouldn't be thinking about it in the perspective of, oh my gosh, I wish I had bought back then. Because I'll tell you what, in 2 or 3 years, when house prices have skyrocketed again, and I'll tell you why in a second, but when house prices have skyrocketed again and interest rates have come down, you locked in that purchase price and now you've got a lower interest rate and a lower monthly payment. And why does that all matter? Because what you have to look at is you have to look at, can I afford the payment today? Because if you can afford the payment today without the Dream for All money, I think you're better off doing it. We have other programs that can give you down payment assistance. We've got programs that can provide you with 3.5% to 5% of the purchase price. Now that's not the 20% you're getting from the state with Dream for All, but it doesn't come with the fact that you have to give up your equity, your portion of your equity to the state. Everything in life is a trade-off. I think this program is an amazing program, but I think that some people think it's a silver bullet and that it's a perfect program. I don't think it's a perfect program. I think that it gives you the opportunity to purchase a home and only make payments on 80% of the purchase price. That's amazing. And you can buy out of your mortgage insurance. And by the way, you won't have mortgage insurance. You put 20% down. But let me rephrase that. The state provides a loan of 20% that if you use all of that money for the down payment, you don't have mortgage insurance, but you have to pay the closing costs. And the closing costs are anywhere from 4 to 5.5% of the purchase price. So what I've had a lot of my clients do is say, you know what, John, when I help people use this program, I helped 7 people use this program at the beginning of the year in March, April. And half of them only put 15% down. They used the other 5%, 4.5% to pay for the closing costs. And one of those closing costs was buying out of the mortgage insurance. So they didn't have to worry about a mortgage insurance payment. The problem is when they sell the house, 20% of the equity goes back to the state. Now, if that was the only way you can afford the monthly payment, in other words, if you're saying, John, I literally would rather rent today than make the payment with one of these alternative programs, then cross your fingers and hope that you get picked in their lottery or whatever they do and that you have the opportunity to get the money. I think it's a great program if it's the only way that you can actually afford or qualify for the payment. But if you can afford or qualify for the monthly payment today with one of these other down payment assistance programs, you are way better off because you can refinance and lower your interest rate and lower your payment. When you refinance with Dream for All, you get one time that you can refinance without having to pay back the state. The second time you refinance, your rate may have come down, but your payment's likely to have gone up. Why? Because you have to pay back the state the money you borrowed plus 20% of your equity. That's a lot of money you're paying. These other assistance programs, you pay 1% interest on the assistance money. You buy a $500,000 home, we give you $15,000 in assistance. Your interest is $150 a year. That's it. $150 a year. I want to tell you a story. Met with a client today who I helped buy a home in 2008. Now people would say, oh my God, 2008, that's when the market was crashing. That's a horrible time to have bought a home. This guy bought a home in 2008 in Stockton for $55,000. That's it, $55,000. And I got for him a down payment assistance program that gave him 20% of the purchase price for a down payment. Totally different than Dream for All. Totally different. It was a county-run program, and they were providing an assistance that was actually a grant, but we're talking about smaller dollars there. It was $11,000 that he got as a grant. So he borrowed $44,000 to buy this $55,000 home, and he's lived there for the last 15 years. He came to me today and said, John, I want to sell it and I want to move. And he's going to sell that property for $310,000. $310,000. He's retired. He's on Social Security, and he's going to walk away increasing his cash net worth by 250 after realtor fees, maybe $225,000. $225,000 that he's going to walk away with. He's going to be able to move back east and buy a house in cash and still have $100,000 left over. That's the power of home ownership. That's the power of having an opportunity to purchase a home he never would have been able to purchase if he hadn't gotten that 20% down from San Joaquin County. Now, he didn't have to share the appreciation, but let's run the math. Now, I know that the dollars are different. He's saying, John, there are no $550,000 homes. No, but just add a zero. I'm sorry, there are no $55,000 homes. No, but just add a zero. Maybe it's a $550,000 home, and instead of him getting $11,000, you get $110,000. And that property over 15 years goes up in the same environment, which it's not unrealistic, can go up to, what would that be? $3 million home. You saw it in the Bay Area. You've seen homes in the San Francisco Bay Area that people bought for $500,000 30 years ago that are worth $3, $4, $5 million right now. Okay, so it happens. And the concept of what he would have paid if he had done Dream for All to buy that home is he would have paid back the $11,000 that he borrowed, and he would have paid 20% of the appreciation. Now, that property went up by $250,000, which means he would have paid back $50,000 in appreciation. He would have paid back a total of $66,000. But guess what? He still was able to walk away with $160,000 in profit on a home that he wouldn't have been able to purchase otherwise. So if you put yourself in the position of being that guy and you just change the math, instead of being a $55,000 home, it's a $550,000 home. He had a choice. He could have bought that home and not used the assistance money, but it put him in a position where he could afford the payment. If he stayed a renter, where could he have invested money? How would he have ever become that wealthy in 15 years? That's the power of home ownership that I'm talking about. And he got a tax write-off. He paid down his principal. His balance started at $44,000. It's at $28,000 right now. So he picked up $16,000 in forced appreciation. In forced savings, paying down his balance every single month. Picked up $16,000. Remember, with your math, we're buying a $550,000 home. That means in 15 years, you're picking up $160,000. Okay, instead of $16,000, you're adding a zero. So the concept is the same. The opportunity is the same. But you have to decide, do I wait for a small window of being one of the few that are lucky? Because here's the deal. If you wait, you run the risk. You run the risk of the housing market getting further ahead of you. What we're dealing with right now is we're dealing with high interest rates, which has caused a lot of people who wanted to buy a home to say, I'm out. Some of you right now, I know people who I'm talking to right now that I've asked to come here. I've got, between all the different platforms, I've got 30 people watching right now. So of all the people that are here right now, I know that some of you are in that position where you're like, John, I was out. I'm out. I'm not going to buy a home because I can't afford it, these payments. My rent is here and I'm paying, you want me to pay this much? Dream for All program makes that more affordable. But here's the deal. Dream for All or not, when interest rates come back down, every one of you are going to jump back into the housing market and want to buy a home. What's that going to do to prices of homes? It's going to drive the prices up. Prices have stopped going up. They've softened, they've gone up a little bit, but I mean, they've stopped the meteoric rise. They've stopped the meteoric rise that we saw between 2020 and 2022 because interest rates shot up. And that's what the Fed was trying to do. But those people still want to buy homes. Those people are going to buy homes. And so what you're dealing with is waiting for interest rates to drop, waiting for Dream for All money to come out. And guess what? At that moment, more buyers are going to be competing with you to buy those same homes. And so the question is, do you wait? Do you cross your fingers and hope you're one of the lucky few that gets the money, and cross your arms and your toes and say, I hope that a bunch of people aren't also competing with me at the same time? Because there's a major problem with housing inventory for two reasons. Because builders took a 10-year timeout. Builders stopped building basically in 2007. I'm not talking about stopped completely, but they slowed way down, and they didn't start building again until 2016-ish. So they took a decade off not building homes in any amount of volume. Yet people kept having babies, and they kept turning 18 years old and 25 years old and moving out and wanting to have a place to live. And now there's not enough homes for everybody. But on top of that, normally you have people who are moving up. They're saying, hey, I bought my first home in 2018 and I want to sell it now because 5 years later, I've got a family and I've outgrown that home. They want to move to the next home. Problem is they refinanced in 2020. And they're sitting on a 2.75% interest rate right now. And they're not going to sell that home because they're not going to go to 7.5% or 7% where the interest rates are right now. But guess what? They're probably not going to do it when rates go to 5 either. They're still at 2.5%. So rates go to 5, more buyers are going to want to buy, but more sellers aren't necessarily going to want to sell. And so you're still going to have an inventory problem. You're going to have worse of an inventory problem, and you're going to have more competition than you have right now. And so the question is it worth waiting? I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball, but what I can tell you is that the opportunity you don't want to let pass you by. And so you have to decide, do I have an option to do this right now? I just got a thumbs up from Karan. Thank you, Karan. You have to decide right now. By the way, if you have comments, if you have questions, if you just want to give me a high five comment and say, John, you're doing a great job, post it in the comments on whatever platform you're watching right now. That helps me a little bit with getting more people to see what I'm doing by putting in comments. And you get to see your name in lights because I'll put your name right over here if you post it as a comment right now. Anyway, here's the deal. You have to decide, is this the time for you to do it? And what are my options? And so what I implore you is don't bury your head in the sand. Don't wait and hope and say, you know what, I hope that I can get the money. I'm going to cross my fingers and hope. Crossing your fingers, hope, it's not a strategy. Okay. So what you have to do is you have to think about a strategy. And the strategy is, let's look at our alternatives. We have programs that can provide you with your down payments and you don't make any monthly payments on it. We have other programs that will provide you with your down payment and some of your closing costs. Now, you do have to make monthly payments on those. We have programs that aren't even down payment assistance. There's a program through the United States Department of Agriculture that will let you buy in certain markets. It's got to be outside of major metropolitan areas. And there is zero down payment required. I probably have 7 different ways to help you buy a home with no down payment. Now, you do have to worry about closing costs in a lot of those situations. But that's where your opportunity right now is you can get the seller to help you cover some closing costs. There's room to negotiate right now. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to negotiate on the property that just got on the market yesterday and has 10 people going through looking at it today. A well-priced home today will still sell very quickly. But a house that's not so well-priced, a house that maybe isn't in high demand, I know of a lot of homes that have been sitting out there for a while. The seller is willing to deal. The seller is willing to help pay for your closing costs. I just got a deal that the seller agreed to pay $18,000 towards the buyer's closing costs. So there are there are opportunities out there to have the seller pay your closing costs. But when there are 10 buyers trying to buy every home that's on the market, like we saw in 2020 and 2021, sellers aren't helping you with closing costs. So how are you going to pay for it? You might have a lower interest rate, but you need more cash out of pocket. And so you have a lot of different challenges. It's not easier. It's not harder. It's different. So pick your hard. Is your hard going to be, hey, I need to struggle through a couple of years of making a payment at a higher monthly payment than what I'm comfortable with? Maybe. Is your hard, hey, I'm going to stay as a renter and hope that things get better and hope my landlord gets me a lower monthly payment or that rents come down? Maybe. I don't know what your hard is, but everything is hard. It's hard right now. Inflation is making it hard for everybody. It is a difficult economy that we are dealing with. The question is, pick your hard. And so if you're going to buy a home, the question is, do you pick your hard right now saying, hey, I'm buying now and I'm having a higher monthly payment than I would like, but you're going to have some easier times later and you're going to build more wealth over time? Or do you pick your hard to say, you know what, I'm going to wait and I'm going to hope, but now you're going to be in a situation where there's a lot more competition and you might need to come up with more money out of pocket because the seller won't help you with closing costs. Guys, there's going to be a hard no matter what you look at. You have to decide what is the hard that you want. So we've got lots of ways that we can help you, whether it be with programs today or whether it be waiting for Dream for All. So I'm going to wrap up by talking, not wrap up, but I'm going to spend a couple minutes talking about, okay, what is the Dream for All program? Why? What is everybody talking about? What's the big deal? Do I really want this or not? So what is Dream for All? So let me explain to you. By the way, if you have any questions, feel free to post into comments, and I'm happy to help answer any of those questions. But I'm going to pull up a slide here really quick that hopefully will help explain a little bit of what the Dream for All program is. So here we go. So let's put this guy right on here. Beautiful. All right. So let me move myself over to the side. Better. All right. So here's what the Dream for All program basically is. It's a shared appreciation program. What does that mean? Well, in this example, you buy a home that is a $500,000 home, and you get $100,000 from the state as a loan, and you borrow $400,000 also from the state. Let me be super clear. This is a package deal. You cannot take any of these assistance programs and say, hey, I want the assistance and I want to use a different type of a loan. You have to get a package deal. So you get the money from the state and you buy a $500,000 home, and you only make payments on $400,000 of the money. That's right. You get a $500,000 home and you only make payments on $400,000 of the money. All right. So I've got somebody that asked a question here, and I said, if you bring up questions, I'll happily bring them on the screen and show you. And so I think I knew, who's watching on YouTube, says, I'm getting a part-time job because a decent home payment is at least $4,400 a month. Me and my wife make $150,000 a year, and it isn't enough. That is super frustrating, and I hear it all the time. And I'm going to add to your frustration because, and I'm going to make a little joke about this, because your username, your whatever you want to call it, your handle is, I think I knew. Well, here's the problem. You think you knew that a part-time job would help you qualify, but a lender won't use income from a part-time job unless you've had that part-time job for 2 years along with your full-time job. Now, if you qualify for the mortgage, but you just aren't comfortable with the payments, then absolutely getting a part-time job helps you be comfortable making the payments. There's a lot of people I talk to that I ask every time that you meet with me, and we sit down, whether it be in person or in Zoom or on the phone, I'm going to ask you, what are you expecting and willing to pay as a monthly payment? And you're going to give me your number. And then I'm going to calculate what I will let you pay. You'd be shocked how many times your number is far lower than mine. I'm going to let you spend a lot more than you're willing to spend. That's a good thing. That means you're being conservative. But if you're in the position like I think I knew, and you're saying, yeah, but I'm not comfortable going to that number that John says I'm qualified for, a part-time job will help. And I get it. And it's frustrating. You should not have to work 60 hours a week to own a home. But again, you got to pick your hard, because if you're anything like the client that I just talked about earlier, your alternative is that you lose out on what he picked up was $225,000 of equity 15 years later. And so where else? Your 401k is not going to do that for you. And if it does, you're going to do that in addition to doing this. And so just recognize the part-time job only helps you feel comfortable making the payment that I already approved you for. If it's a situation where you said, hey, our $150,000 a year in income is not enough to qualify for the mortgage, we have to make more money in order to qualify, you can use a co-signer for that. So a co-signer can help you. And actually, I think I need a clarification. I qualify, but I'm not comfortable. My rent went from $2,300 to $2,600. Beautiful. So I think it's really what I'm talking about. But I'll finish my sentence a second ago, which is you can use if you don't qualify, you can use a co-signer. Okay. But if you do qualify, like I think I knew was saying, says, hey, if I do qualify, I'm just not comfortable with the monthly payment. The part-time job is a great option. I'm not telling you that it's a great thing to work a part-time job, but we've got to sacrifice sometimes. And this is one area where I'm really proud of you. I don't even know who you are, but I think it's really something that too few people are willing to stretch, to find another way, to move in with your brother and sister and buy all three of you together and share the house for a few years until you've built enough equity and rates have gone down enough. And then one of you can buy the other two out. And the other two can take their equity and go buy something else. That's the kind of sacrifice that you need to do to own a home today. Jennifer has a question or comment. She says, can the part-time job be considered if it's in the same line of work as the previous full-time job? Not really. By the way, guys, I love the comments. Please keep them coming because this helps to be interactive and help answer your questions. I want to make this as interactive as possible. We've got 15 minutes left of time I've allocated for this, and so I'm happy to share and make this interactive. So Jennifer, here's the deal. It's about having 2 jobs. And if you have 2 jobs, you have to have a 2-year history of 2 jobs. You can define them as full or part-time. You can switch from a part-time job to a full-time job or a full-time job to a part-time job. And depending upon the circumstances, you don't need to have a 2-year history. But you must have a 2-year history if you're working 2 jobs. If you don't, I only get to count one or the other. Because the thinking is anybody can go out and get a second job for a month or 2 or 6 or 12. But if you have a second job for 2 years, then you're committed to keeping it. Less than 2 years, we're not positive you're going to do it. It might just be a thing you're doing in order to qualify. And so that's where that rule comes from. So Jennifer, hopefully that helps answer your question. Feel free to add another question if that didn't help. So guys, the Dream for All program, let me keep going down the road of what is the program. So basically, you bought that home for $500,000, and 5 years later, the house is appreciated. It's worth $640,000. $640,000. Okay, so the property's gone up by $140,000. How does that math work? Well, $112,000 of that is your money. $28,000 goes to the state. So the state gets back. We go to the next one where it says homeowner sells the home. And the Dream for All loan is paid back. $128,000 is paid back to the state. How did they come up with $128,000? Because they loaned you $100,000. You have to pay that back. And they get 20% of the appreciation, or 20% of the $140,000, which means they get $28,000 for their interest. So therefore, they get $128,000. But your balance has dropped. Your balance is now $370,000. You see that right there in that third icon, right at the bottom 2/3. It says the first mortgage balance is $370,000. How did that work? Because every month for 5 years, you were paying down your balance. And so at year 5, you've dropped your balance from $400,000 to $370,000. What landlord is going to give you part of your rent payment as credit towards when you sell or when you move out? Nobody. But when you own a home, you get that benefit. When you own a home, you're paying down your balance and you get that benefit. And so even though your appreciation was only $112,000, you're actually walking away with $142,000. Now you have to pay the realtor fees. So there is a cost for selling the home that comes out of your $142,000. But you walk away with $142,000, which is the $112,000, which is your share of the appreciation, and $30,000 that came from the first mortgage pay down. So to kind of put this in a different way, that money, you see the same thing here where that money is paid back and then it's recycled. The money is put back into the Dream for All program for future people to use. Now, the concept that the state came up with was simple, and it may or may not work. But the concept was, hey, if we fund this every year for 10 years. Now, they wanted to fund it with $1 billion a year for 10 years. $500 million for the first year and $1 billion for 9 more years. You would have enough money that it would continue to self-fulfill. It would continue to pay in, enough money would be paid back in to help anybody else who wants to take the money out, and the state would never need to put any money. It would be self-sufficient, okay? But they cut back the first $500 million to $300 million earlier this year. The second round, they cut back from $500 million, which really should have been $1 billion, to $200 million. So in the first 2 years, they've only given $500 million, and the original plan was in the first 2 years, they should have given 3 times that money. And so is the state going to put enough money into this program so that it can actually run itself long-term? I don't know. I think it's a great program. I think it has really great potential. But I think right now, and once that happens, by the way, then anybody can use the money at any point in time because it's pretty much self-fulfilling. The money keeps coming back over and over again. You got to think about this like toilet paper. You're like, John, what do you mean toilet paper? You got to think about it like toilet paper in 2020. I see your question. I'll pull it up in just a second. You got to think about it. Toilet paper in 2020. So toilet paper runs out because, well, it's COVID and everybody needs to stay home and, well, do their business, and they need toilet paper. So they ran out of toilet paper. And so the moment that any toilet paper was available, what did everybody do? They hoarded. They got a bunch of toilet paper and they bought more than they really needed. And they had case loads of toilet paper in their garage that they were never going to use. And at a certain point, they made enough toilet paper and there was enough sitting in backstock that nobody needed to hoard anymore. And you could just go to the store and buy toilet paper that you needed when you needed it. And so that's kind of what's happening with this program. There's not enough money out there. So everybody's hoarding and jumping and fearful and fighting for it. It's like that TV at Best Buy on the day after Thanksgiving that there's one at this price. And you have fist fights that break out to get the TV. But if they sold 100 of them at that price, there wouldn't be fist fights. And so once the state has enough money in the system, once the state has funded enough money into it, it'll be self-fulfilling and there won't be fist fights over the TV. There won't be people rushing to get this money as quickly as they can because it'll just be another option, another program, another feather in our cap to help people become homeowners. But for now, we're a long way away from that. And it's up to the state to decide if they're going to fund it appropriately. All right, so please keep the questions going. So Saya has a question. Does the program look at the income for only the borrower on the loan or everyone in the home since there's an income limit? Great question. I love that question. It is only the borrower on the loan. So there is an income limit, but we're only looking at the borrower. Now, I can't use anybody else's income to qualify for the mortgage. But Saya, what this is, hopefully I'm saying your name correctly. Saya, what this is it's based on qualifying income. Almost all down payment assistance programs use qualifying income as the calculation. And so when you're looking at qualifying income, what you're looking at is how much money did the mortgage company's underwriter decide was eligible for use to repay? So for example, if somebody has that part-time job, I think I knew said, hey, I went and got a part-time job. The great news I think I knew is that part-time job income will not count towards the income limits because we're only counting qualifying income and we cannot, bad news, can't use the qualifying income to qualify for the loan. Good news, the qualifying income the other income that isn't part of the qualifying income doesn't count against you. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and this is a related but completely unrelated comment, and I promise it'll only be a quick 30 seconds. But they said, people put too much emotion behind news. News, events, factual information, it's just a fact. It's not really good or it's not really bad. It's a perspective you look at it through. And they use the example, and I'm using this because I'm talking about, hey, having that part-time job and not being able to count the income, well, that's bad news. Well, the fact that I don't have to count it towards the income limit and therefore I qualify for the program because I'm not over the limit, well, that's good news. And this podcast I was listening to, the author, the speaker, said, it's kind of like somebody who is an athlete in high school and they break a bone. And they break that bone and they're devastated because it ruined their high school career. And then they graduate high school and they turn 18 and they find out that they're getting drafted into the military. They don't want to go there. And then when they get to the physical, they find out that, hey, that broken bone that caused you to not be able to play sports in high school and was devastating, it caused you to not be eligible for being in the military. And they said, okay, then you're not being drafted. You can go home. And now it's good news. The news wasn't any different. It was simply the matter of the perspective. It's a matter of the lens that you look through it. People look at the housing market and they say, oh my God, it's bad news. Interest rates are high. Well, 2 or 3 years ago, it was, oh my God, it's bad news. You can't get an offer accepted without writing an offer $50,000 above the asking price. And on top of that, you say, and by the way, I think I answered your question, so I took it off of there. On top of that, you say, 3 years ago, you bought a home, you had to tell the seller, hey, I'd buy the house without doing any inspections. And so many people said, John, I don't want to buy a house without doing inspections. I'll do anything I have to do to be able to do inspections and buy a home. I don't want to buy in this market because I can't buy a house without doing inspections because nobody will accept my offer. By the way, hi, Jeff. So Jeff said that Jeff is here. And so Jeff, I appreciate it. I told you guys to put a comment on there. You'll see your name in lights. So feel free to put a comment, even if it's just to say hi. So those people said, you know what, John, I'm unhappy. I'm unhappy because it's 2020 and rates are at 2.5, but that's normal. Like 2.5%. You know what? My buddy got 2.25. How come I can't get 2.25? Wouldn't y'all wish that you could get 3 right now? Wouldn't 3.5 sound beautiful right now? But it's all about perspective. And we look at it and then we wait And we say, no, this isn't the right time. There's something else I have to do. Can you tell I'm passionate about this? Here's the deal. It's never the right time. If you have children, was it the right time to have children? I don't know. And if you plan on having children, then maybe you couldn't. And then, that's horrible for people who can't and have struggles. And I'm not making light of it. I'm saying it's just a fact that nothing happens on the timeline that we expect it to happen. And so don't get yourself caught up in saying, oh, I'm going to wait for this. Oh, wait, it's a bad time right now. There is never the right time to do anything. Okay. You think about that adage that says the best time to plant a tree was 50 years ago. You know what the second best time to plant a tree is? Today. So you can't go back 50 years, then plant one today. You can't go back 3 years and buy a house and say, oh my gosh, I wanted that 2.5% interest rate. That's the best time to buy a home. Maybe. But you had to buy the house without even knowing. You talk about people, I talked earlier about people who bought using Dream for All, that the first round, that couldn't cancel their contract even if they had problems with the house. Well, there are a lot of people who bought in 2020 and 2021 that didn't even get to know what was wrong with the house until they owned it. So don't complain and say, my God, this is horrible right now. It just is. Today is what today is. And I know I'm on a soapbox, and I know that this really doesn't have anything to do with my soapbox, but I'm passionate about this because I think too many people sit and wait, and then they say, oh, man, I missed it. I missed the chance. We shoulda all over ourselves. Stop shoulda-ing yourself and to take action. I'm not telling you to buy a home that you can't afford. I'm telling you, change your sights. I had a client who wants to buy a house in the East Bay. And he said, John, I want to buy a house he was waiting for Dream for All. And then I shared him the information that I'm sharing with you guys tonight. He goes, yeah, I'm not going to wait. If it happens, it's great. But he wanted to buy a house at $550,000. So that's what it's going to take to get a house in the neighborhood that I want, in the city that I want, and the size that I want. And I said, where are you living right now? And he goes, I'm living in a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house that I rent for, really, really cheap. And I said, well, you're going to stay there. You'd rather stay there. And you're thinking about having a baby. And you'd rather stay there and have a second child with your wife in a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house than to own a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house? He says, well, a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house is too small. But you're going to rent it. Like you're renting that right now. And so you're unwilling to buy because it's too small what you're willing to rent right now. And right now, yes, it's cheaper in payment to rent, but you have a good job. You can afford the payment on that 2-bedroom, 1-bath house. Now they're looking at 2-bedroom, 2-bath condos. They realize, hey, if we just shift our thinking a little bit, there is stuff that's in a better price range that I can afford the monthly payment. So don't get so caught up on, oh my gosh, if I wait for Dream for All, I can get my dream pro home and I can get the Barbie dream house that I always wanted. Okay. The Barbie dream house is great. Don't misunderstand. It's not your first house. That's not typical for you to get that house on the first house. And so here's my point. My point is Dream for All is a great program. Let me get back on track here. I got 2 minutes left on my time that I had allocated. So if you have questions, feel free to ask them right now. I'll put up my little questions banner right over here. So if you have questions, feel free to post questions. While I am doing that, I'm going to put up the QR code for the next steps. Let me pull this up really quickly here. Come on, John. So post your questions into chat. But what I'll tell you is Dream for All does require you to be a first-time home buyer. I expect that to be the same. They expect home buyer education. That was a major problem the first time. They allowed people to buy a home that didn't need the down payment and use a huge down payment of their own. They let people put a significant amount of their own money towards buying the home. And I think that was a mistake. I think that they let too many people use the money that didn't need it. I don't know if they're going to make it needs-based, but I think that they should. So here are the next steps. QR code that is on the left that is closest to me says scan here to get started. So if you're saying, hey, John, I'm ready to check this out. Remember, the money for Dream for All is not released yet. I don't know when. Applying with me now does not guarantee you any money, but it does allow me to take a sneak peek behind the curtain, to take a look and say, hey, how's your credit? And I'll only do a soft credit pull. It allows me to look at your income and say, hey, that part-time job, I can't use that income. It allows me to say, hey, do you have a pay raise coming? Can you talk to your boss about getting a pay raise? Because if you can get a pay raise, or if you can shift that bonus income over to regular income and ask them, hey, is there a possibility to get less bonus and more regular pay? That would help you qualify. There's things like that that I can strategize. If you are self-employed, let me look at your taxes before you file them, because in California, in most counties, the deadline to file was extended through October 15th for everybody. So let me look at your taxes before you file. So the QR code on the left, that closest to me, that is the one to get started in reviewing your application, taking a look at your credit. The QR code on the right, that was the original version of the program. Those are all of the guidelines. This one right here, actually is the same QR code as on the left as what you saw before, but it just gives you the link. So if you don't like QR codes, you can go to apply.johnloneking.com. So apply.johnloneking.com or scan the QR code and it will get you started. So I definitely want you to go down that road and subscribe to my YouTube channel. So if you haven't done so already, if you're not watching through YouTube, please subscribe, like, share, mash that like button and share it with your friends. So ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate you taking the time. I've got about 20 people that still stayed on through the end. So thank you for listening. I really appreciate it. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to post them. And if you're watching after the fact, I will go back and check comments afterwards and I'll answer your questions. I am absolutely interviewing for the job to be your lender. Whether you're looking at Dream for All, this a different assistance program, or no assistance at all, I do almost every program that's out there. And so I would love the opportunity to serve you and those you love. So I appreciate you joining me for an hour on a Monday night. Everybody have an absolutely wonderful evening and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.